ほら、ルフィ、今一緒に海賊になる仲間を探してるんだ。
Hello guys, welcome to my channel The Wandering Zoro, your go-to destination for anime-related content. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. In today's video, we're going to be diving into part 3 of the series. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. 1 year later, the sludge villain incident. Izuku walked by himself as he was on his way to school. He had gotten cleaned up from his workout and smiled at the day he was having. He was now 14 years old, his green hair flowing gently in the wind. Thanks to his father's genetics, he was a healthy 5 feet 9 inches with a very lean body from all of the workouts he had been doing the past couple years. He wore clothing that was slightly baggy to make sure people didn't know of his training, mainly his siblings. His notebook cover company was now making him around $5,000 a month in profit, and if he wanted to, he could just use the money to live off of the rest of his life. Who would have thought that my obsession with heroes would turn into a business? He murmured. He still was doing designs of heroes on the covers, and they were still doing him good. He had been completing tasks and goals that were set for him to get Quirk creation points, and as of now, he had a total of 3 Quirk creation points for him to use. He had been saving them as he didn't know what due to. He had been keeping contact with his friends that he went on the tour with as much as possible, making sure to hang out with them at least once a month, as some live over a few hours away. The streets of Mizudafu bustled with the usual morning activity, parents rushing their children to school, shopkeepers opening their stores, and the occasional hero flying overhead on their way to a mission. Izuku's sharp eyes caught sight of a hero in action, a towering man clad in red and gold apprehending a petty thief. A spark of admiration lit up in Izuku's emerald eyes, and his pace quickened. He couldn't wait to reach school, where he'd get to discuss the latest hero news with his classmates, or at least the few who tolerated his enthusiasm. He was interrupted from his thoughts when he saw an explosion in the distance. He ran over to see that there was a fight happening. As Izuku Midoriya watches the intense scene unfold at Tatooine Station, his mind races with thoughts and emotions, mirroring his awe and admiration from the first time he witnessed heroes in action. He immediately pulled out his hero analysis book similar to what Jiro got him a while ago. Standing off to the side, Izuku's wide eyes are filled with admiration for the hero's swift and coordinated response. He can hardly contain his excitement as he observes Death Arms using his overwhelming strength to hold the falling portal catenary, his powerful muscles straining under the weight. It's exactly the kind of heroism that Izuku has always dreamed of, a hero putting everything on the line to save others, no matter the cost. Backdraft's ability to create a water fence is something Izuku is particularly fascinated by. His water pump quirk is so precise and well-timed, controlling the situation by keeping the citizens at a safe distance. Izuku knows how important it is for heroes to maintain public safety, and Backdraft's calm and strategic use of his power impresses him greatly. But what captures his attention the most is Kamui Woods. As the hero with the ability to control and manipulate wood, Kamui's arrival feels like a turning point in the fight. Izuku can almost feel the tension rise, knowing that the giant villain is going to have to face Kamui's formidable power. He imagines Kamui's flexible, controlled movements, his wood-like appendages sprouting from his body to restrain the villain, all while the massive figure looms before him. It's a battle of agility versus brute force, and Izuku wonders how the fight will unfold. Izuku watches the unfolding fight with an intensity that borders on obsession, his notebook already out, scribbling furiously as he documents every move, every strategy, and every quirk application in the battle. He can barely keep up with the pace of Kamui Wood's movements, marveling at how the hero's Arbor quirk allows him to dodge the giant villain's crushing attacks with such finesse. When the giant villain lashes out with his enormous hand, Izuku's breath catches in his throat, fearing for Kamui Wood's safety. But the hero's fluid agility amazes him. Kamui dodges effortlessly, his wooden limbs extending and retracting in perfect harmony with his movements. Izuku mutters to himself as he writes, noting how Kamui Woods uses his quirk not just for offense, but also for mobility and evasion. Dodged again. His reaction time is incredible, and his control over his arbor quirk, it's almost like an extension of his body, Izuku mumbles, oblivious to the curious stares of the bystanders around him. When Kamui Woods attempts to restrain the villain by running up his arm and seizing his wrist, Izuku is on the edge of his seat. That's it. He's trying to immobilize him. If he can just, but his excitement turns to shock as the giant villain effortlessly waves Kamui Woods away, sending him flying through the air. Just as Kamui Woods prepares to unleash his lacquered chain prison, Izuku leans forward, barely able to contain his excitement. But before the attack can land, the ground shakes violently as a massive figure leaped into the fray. Without hesitation, MT Lady strikes with her canyon cannon, a devastating kick that sends the giant villain sprawling. The force of her attack shakes the area, and the crowd erupts in cheers as the villain collapses, defeated. Izuku's jaw drops in awe. She took him down in one hit. Her strength and timing are unbelievable. As the dust settles and the crowd's cheers grow louder, Izuku can't help but feel a mixture of emotions: admiration for the heroes, awe at their abilities, and a burning determination to one day stand among them. Watching Kamui Woods' strategy, MT Lady's overwhelming power, and the teamwork of all the heroes involved only reinforces his dream. Izuku blushed a little at how MT Lady was dressed, but still wrote her down in his hero analysis book, number 13. He knew she dressed like that on purpose. He started to mutter as he wrote, "This is her hero debut, and she didn't do that bad of a job." Her quirk is gigantification, allowing her to increase the size of her whole body. I wonder if she can control the exact degree of her size, or if it's always a fixed height. Does it take a lot of stamina to maintain? How much space does she need to maneuver effectively without causing collateral damage? Izuku's pen flew across the page, filling it with notes and sketches of MT Lady's stance, her canyon cannon attack, and the way she seemed to time her arrival perfectly to finish the fight. His mind buzzed with analysis, considering how her quirk could be both a strength and a potential weakness. She's definitely strong, but I wonder how she handles tighter spaces or urban environments where her size could be a liability. And her timing, was that purely instinct? Or does she have experience calculating the right moment to intervene? Oh, and that kick. The force generated must have been immense. The angle, the precision. If the villain had managed to dodge, would it have been hard for her to recover? The crowd around him began to disperse, satisfied that the danger was over, but Izuku stayed rooted in place, lost in his thoughts. He glanced back at Kamui Woods, who was already helping Death Arms and Backdraft secure the area. Kamui Woods was about to use lacquered chain prison. I wonder if he's frustrated about being upstaged or if he's used to working with heroes like MT Lady. Teamwork is so critical in these scenarios. Maybe I should add a note about how they combined their efforts. He heard his ringtone from his pocket to see who it was. He pulled it out to see it was Momo Yaoyorozu and smiled at that. From that day on the UA tour, he and Jiro became great friends with Momo, Shoji, Ibara, and Tokoimi. While they didn't hang out all the time, they were able to see each other occasionally to talk about what they were doing. Izuku quickly answered the call, his face lighting up with a genuine smile. "Hey, Yaoyorozu. What's up?" Momo's calm yet enthusiastic voice came through the line. "Good morning, Yagi. How are you today?" "Just dandy, but you are not going to believe this. I got to see Kamui Wood, Death Arms, and then a new hero called MT Lady making her debut." Izuku's excitement bubbled through the phone as he launched into a detailed recount of the morning's events. "Yaoyorozu, it was incredible. Kamui Woods was so agile, dodging the villain's attacks like it was nothing. Then MT Lady came out of nowhere with this massive kick, the canyon cannon, and took the villain down in one hit. Her timing and power were insane." "That's amazing. I bet you were able to jot that down already," she said, giggling. "Yeah, I was. Say, not to be unappreciative for you calling me, but don't you have school?" "Because I do," he said as he walked through the gate to go to class. "Oh, well, our school gets a day off a month, and that is that day," she said happily. "I was debating on using it to meet you when you were done with school." Izuku blinked, surprised but excited by Momo's suggestion. "Really? Do you want to meet up? That sounds great. I mean, if it's not too much trouble for you." "Not at all," Momo assured him. "I thought we could spend some time going over hero strategies. I've been refining a few ideas for combat scenarios, and I think your insights would be invaluable. Plus, I've been curious about what you do for your training." I was thinking the library near your school, Momo suggested. It's quiet, and they have private study rooms we could use. Izuku walked down the hallway to his classroom smiling. I would love that. I will meet you there. Bye, my class is starting now, he said. See you later, Yagi, said Momo hanging up. Izuku put down the phone and sat down in his normal seat. He looked to see Ichiro and Inori glancing at him. The two of them were physically much stronger than they were when his father started to train him. Not quirk-wise, but body-wise. Inori was much more toned while Ichiro bulked up and slimmed down slightly, giving off a much more athletic build than the bulky physique he used to have. They both had been putting in extra hours in the gym, following Izuku's father's advice to work on their physical condition and resilience. Nothing really changed between him and his family, and to be honest, he was fine with that. He had grown accustomed to the feeling of doing something for himself and hanging out with his friends that truly cared for him. He looked up to see his teacher walk into the room with a stack of papers. As the teacher began handing them out, his gaze lingered on Izuku for a moment. This is your last year, he began, his tone serious. You should start thinking seriously about your future. But you guys are all planning to become heroes, right? He paused, waiting for a response. Yeah. A chorus of voices responded enthusiastically from the class as kids started to use their quirks. The teacher nodded approvingly. Yes, yes. You all have wonderful quirks, he said, but his tone shifted. But using your powers at school is against the rules. Izuku's mind snapped back to attention. The excitement that had started to build inside him now shifted to focus. He understood where this was going. Using your abilities outside of controlled environments could easily lead to accidents, misunderstandings, or worse, putting others in danger. His thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice. Sensei. Katsuki Bakugo's voice cut through the air with his trademark intensity. Don't lump me with these guys, Bakugo snapped, his face contorted with disdain. There's no way we're going to be stuck at the bottom with the rest of these losers. Agreed, myself, Inori, and Kaken are going to go far. These guys would be like to get hired by some D-lister in the future, Ichiro said, pointing his thumb back at the crowd of students. Izuku shook his head at his brother's remark. Now he will admit Impact Drive is a very powerful quirk. Inori's quirk mind's reach is also very powerful. Even Bakugo's quirk is as well, but they didn't need to act like snobs about it. Any quirk, trained well enough, could have its uses for hero work. He was snapped from his thoughts as the teacher turned their attention to the trio. Oh yeah, if I remember correctly, Inori, Ichiro, and Bakugo, the teacher said, eyeing the group. You three wanted to attend UA? Is that correct? Ichiro nodded with a serious expression, his sharp eyes showing nothing but determination. Absolutely, he said, his voice steady. UA is where the strongest go. It's where I belong. Bakugo's smirk was immediate, his usual arrogance on full display. Of course, we're aiming for UA. We aced the mock test. We're the only ones at this school who could possibly get into UA. His voice boomed with unshakable confidence, as if the fact were a known truth. We'll definitely surpass All Might and become the top hero. Our names will be inscribed on the list of top earners. Yeah, sure, Kaken, Ichiro added with a grin, his voice filled with the same level of arrogance. You might just beat everyone to the top. Inori and I will be right behind you, though. We're not the type to settle for second place. Expect us to be right there every step of the way. Oh yeah, that is right, Izuku, you were planning on attending UA, right? Asked the teacher, making everyone divert their attention to the young man sitting in his seat. Yes, sir, was all he said, causing an uproar between the students. Most were laughter, but his siblings and Bakugo just looked at him with a mixture of anger and confusion. The youngest of the Yagi triplets, attending UA, that's the best jokes I've heard all day, said one of the students, laughing his butt off. Izuku gritted his teeth, but kept silent. His classmates' laughter echoed in his ears, but he refused to let it shake him. He had spent too much time doubting himself already. Now, more than ever, he needed to stay focused on his goal. His siblings, Inori and Ichiro, didn't help matters. Inori raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Ichiro, however, shook his head, his lips curling into a sneer. Pathetic, he muttered under his breath, but just loud enough for Izuku to hear. You'll never make it. Just face it, you're not cut out for it. Izuku sighed once more. This was going to be a long day, he said to himself, sitting up in his seat. Elsewhere. Hey, stop that villain. Many people could see a sludge villain running down the street with the wallet of the person it took from. Toshinori was holding some groceries, seeing this happen, and sighed. I can't even buy groceries without something happening, he said, transforming into his buff form. He then started to chase after the said villain. With Izuku. Izuku had finished writing in his analysis book and checked his phone to see a notification of a sludge-like villain. Maybe I could swing by on my way to Yaoyorozu to see it, he said, getting up from his desk. His danger sense went off and yanked his notebook away just in time to see Bakugo and practically lunged for it. Bakugo was slightly surprised at the speed, but continued anyway. I am afraid I am not. Done with you, Deku. Done with what? He asked, half annoyed and half curious. What book is that? He asked, trying to see it. My Hero Analysis book number 13, he said, still not letting him get it. He then saw a green aura form around the book, realizing this was Inori's doing. He quickly put the book into his bag, preventing her from using her quirk on it. Ichiro snorted. You know, Deku, heroes start making waves when they are young, and don't even get me started on you not having a quirk. So, what? UA got rid of that rule long ago, he said, shrugging his shoulders. The point that he is making is to not apply to UA, you idiot, said Bakugo threateningly. I don't care what you think about my quirk, Kaken, Izuku replied, his voice steady. Quirks don't define who you are, or where you go in life. Bakugo's expression twisted into an even deeper scowl. Then why the hell are you even trying to go to UA? You're just gonna hold everyone back with your uselessness, he shouted, his voice filled with contempt. His hands sparked small explosions, showing just how ready he was to act on his anger. Inori shook her head at Izuku and sighed. All right, guys, let's go. He isn't worth it, she said, trying to get them out. Bakugo smirked as he waited right at the door, staring at Izuku. Hey, I do have a great idea for you to get a quirk, he said, smirking. You could take a swan dive off the roof and hope for a quirk in the next life, he said, chuckling slightly. This even had Ichiro and Inori laughing, leaving the room. Now Izuku didn't care about a whole lot of what they had to say, but the fact that 3 of them had laughed at telling him to commit suicide was just wrong. This made him feel much different than before. He shook his head as he put his backpack straps on, leaving the classroom. He knew his siblings didn't care about him, but that hurt more than he thought it would. He started to make his way over to the library, realizing how far he had come. He went from a scrawny, quirkless, awkward, and above-average smart kid. Now he was a lean, athletic, super smart, and still awkward kid who was on his way to being a hero with several quirks. That he was on the same path as the sludge villain. Something went off in his head. Not danger sense, but an empty feeling in his stomach. That was when his danger sense went off. He activated his eagle eyes to see there was sludge starting to go around his foot. He actively sends 2 tendrils off to the end of the tunnel. He propelled himself away from the villain. The sludge villain grinned at Izuku. Well, you seem like a power quirk user. You will make a great vessel for me, he said, charging down the tunnel at Izuku. Izuku was prepared to fight as the manhole cover in between then burst open. A man standing well above him, with blonde hair in the shape of a rabbit, stood menacingly. You've got to be kidding me right now, thought Izuku as he saw All Might, his father, right there. Fear not, citizen. I am here, he said, cocking his fist back at the scared villain. Take this, you evildoer. Texas smash. The ground trembled as All Might launched his fist forward with earth-shattering force. The sludge villain, caught off guard by the sheer power of the attack, was sent flying backward into the side of the tunnel, its body splattering across the walls before collapsing into a heap. The impact left a crater in the pavement, and the air was filled with the sound of debris settling. Izuku stood frozen for a moment, his eyes wide in disbelief. For as much as he neglected him, he sure as hell was strong. He wasn't the #1 hero for nothing. In the blink of an eye, Izuku saw All Might capture the villain in a soda bottle. All Might twisted the cap onto the soda bottle, trapping the sludge villain within. He inspected the bottle with a satisfied grin. There we go. Another job well done, he said, holding it up like a trophy. He looked back to see that his youngest son of all people was there. Izuku? What the hell was he doing here? Thank God I got here. He wouldn't have been able to defend himself, he said, turning to walk to the boy. Young man, are you hurt in any way, and are you okay? He asked with that grin still on his face. Yes, sir. I am fine, said Izuku as calm as he could be. He wouldn't lie. His adrenaline was pumping right now, and seeing his father didn't help any either. That is good, young man. Would you like my autograph? He asked, leaning down over him. Even if he didn't like his father all that much, having an autograph from All Might would be great to pass on to his children. He knew that, and that he would love and take care of them much more than he ever did. Izuku hesitated for a moment before nodding. Yes, sir, handing him his hero analysis book. As his dad took his book, he thought about All Might as a whole. Now, even though he didn't respect his father, he still respected All Might to model after him to some extent. Saving people with a smile on his face is something that he thought was a great thing All Might did. It reassured people that they would be okay. That was about the only takeaway, though. The older he got, the more he tried to separate the hero he was and the man he was behind the scenes. All Might flipped through Izuku's hero analysis for the future notebook, a faint glimmer of surprise crossing his face. The pages were filled with meticulous notes, sketches, and detailed diagrams analyzing quirks and battle tactics. This is impressive, young man, All Might said, his voice tinged with genuine admiration. You've put a lot of thought into this. Izuku shifted uncomfortably. Thank you, he said quietly, watching as All Might scrawled his autograph across the top of a blank page. Say, if you don't mind me asking, what would like to do with your life, young man? Izuku sighed internally as he knew what his father was doing. He was trying to be curious, but to him, this would look like a casual conversation between hero and citizen. He couldn't give it away, not for what he had planned anyway. He wanted it to hit his family all at once, what they missed out on. I am not sure, to be honest. I plan on going to UA. Then after that, I do not know, he said, trying to not placate it. A fine goal. But that is okay, you don't have it figured out yet. I didn't for a long time when I was a boy, he said, giving him a thumbs up. Izuku nodded, not wanting to continue this any further. All right, sir. I will let you take the villain to the proper people, and I'll be on my way, he said, turning away from him. Good deal, he said, crouching down to launch himself off. As Toshinori soared through the air, he could feel that the conversation was off. Was Izuku always that quiet? Normally, he was a pretty loud kid when it came to stuff. He liked it, but that was every kid. He would have to see him later tonight. He landed on a rooftop to give himself a cool down from his transformation, not realizing he was missing something in his pocket. With Izuku, he shook his head lightly at this predicament. He just hoped that he wouldn't really bring it up after today. He looked up to see Yaoyorozu leaning up against a brick wall that led to the library, smiling at Izuku. Hey, Yaoyorozu, called out Izuku. Izuku approached Yaoyorozu, her calm smile, a welcome sight after the whirlwind encounter with his father. She waved at him, pushing off the wall with effortless grace. You're late, she teased lightly, her tone warm. I was beginning to think you ditched me for something more exciting. Izuku chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his head. Not exactly. Ran into some trouble on the way here, nothing I couldn't handle, though. Yaoyorozu raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. Trouble? What kind of trouble? Izuku hesitated for a moment before deciding it wasn't worth hiding. Sludge villain. But don't worry, I am okay. Her expression shifted to one of concern. Are you okay? Did you get hurt? I'm fine, Izuku reassured her, waving off her worry. Well, how about we go and get some food? I am sure you are hungry, and you can tell me what happened. The library can wait, she said, trying to pull him along. Izuku smiled at Yaoyorozu's offer. The idea of eating something good after a stressful encounter sounded perfect. Yeah, that sounds great, he said, his voice sounding more relaxed than it had all day. Good. I know a place not far from here, Yaoyorozu said, already turning toward the exit. It's a small cafe, but their food is really good. You'll like it. Izuku nodded eagerly, following her as they made their way through the streets. As they walked, the cool evening air started to settle in. It was refreshing after the tension of the day, and for a brief moment, Izuku let his mind wander to more peaceful things, like the meal ahead. So how's your training going? Yaoyorozu asked as they walked side by side. It's going well, Izuku replied, though he felt a little unsure. He'd been working hard to improve his skills and learn more about his quirks, but lately, there was this gnawing feeling that something wasn't quite right. His encounter with All Might earlier that day only added to that unease. Yaoyorozu noticed his hesitance. Is everything all right? You seem a little distracted. Izuku nodded, smiling at her. Yeah, I am good. Yaoyorozu gave him a sideways glance, sensing there was more to the story. If you ever want to talk about it, you know I'm here, right? Her voice was warm, and there was no judgment in her words. Izuku felt a surge of gratitude toward her. I appreciate it, Izuku said quietly. I really do. I just don't know if I'm ready to talk about it yet. They walked in silence for a few more moments before Yaoyorozu spoke again, her tone lighter now. Well, I'm sure some good food will help you feel better. You'll see. Izuku smiled. Yeah, you're probably right. The two of them continued to walk as they made their way to the cafe. Momo looked at one of her green-haired friends with a smile on her face. What was weird was that she did feel something weird on her left leg. She looked down to see there was sludge already up to her knee, and it was rising faster. Yaoyorozu's eyes widened in alarm as she realized the sludge creeping up her leg. Its sickly, viscous texture clung tightly, and it was spreading upward quickly. She immediately grabbed Izuku's arm, pulling him back as she tried to free herself. Yagi, it's the sludge villain, she exclaimed, her calm demeanor giving way to urgency. Izuku's heart raced as he turned to see the familiar greenish mass of the sludge villain writhing and bubbling from right behind her. This causes people in the streets to panic at the sight of the villain. Izuku's eyes widened as the crowd around them erupted in chaos. People screamed and scattered, some ducking into alleyways while others sprinted in the opposite direction. The sludge villain's gurgling voice boomed, his slimy form writhing with malicious intent. You're not escaping me this time. The villain growled, his semi-liquid tendrils lashing out toward Momo. Momo struggled against the sludge gripping her leg, her normally calm and composed expression replaced with one of alarm. Izuku wasted no time, his instincts kicking into high gear. He grabbed her arm and pulled, trying to free her from the villain's grasp, but the sludge only tightened its hold. Momo, use your quirk. You have to create something to fight back or stun him. Izuku shouted over the noise of the panicked crowd. Momo clenched her jaw and nodded, forcing herself to focus. She placed her free hand on her exposed forearm, and within seconds, the outline of a large shield formed around her arm, preventing the villain from getting a good grip on her. I won't let you get away. You will be a great vessel. The villain snarled. Time for you to go, kid, he said, looking at Izuku. The villain set a punch right into Izuku's chest, losing his grip on Momo, as he was sent flying into a car. Izuku crashed into the car with a loud thud, the force knocking the wind out of him. Pain radiated through his body as he struggled to regain his bearings. His vision blurred for a moment, but he shook his head, forcing himself to focus. Her shield had managed to block some of the sludge's advance, but the villain's relentless nature made it clear they weren't out of danger yet. The sludge villain turned his attention back to Momo, his slimy mass surging forward. You think you can escape me? Think again, he growled, his tendrils lashing out to grab her once more. It was a pandemonium. Izuku's mind swirled right now, and everything slowed down. He looked to his left to see Death Arms, Kamui Woods, and Backdraft trying to contain the crowd. He was amazed at how fast they got here. To his right, he sees MT Lady blocking the way at the other end of the street. He didn't blame them 100% because their quirks weren't suited for a villain like this. Then he saw Momo still struggling against the villain. Most of her skin was getting covered, which wouldn't be good for her quirk. Izuku gritted his teeth, his body protesting every movement as he forced himself to stand. The sharp pain radiating through his chest was nothing compared to the urgency surging in his veins. Momo needed him, and there was no time to hesitate. He put a smile on his face as he prepared himself for battle. Let go of her, Izuku roared, summoning his resolve as 3 tendrils of black whip shot out from his arms, streaking toward the sludge villain like dark lightning. The glowing black tendrils wrapped around Momo's body gently but firmly. He stomped his feet into the already damaged car as leverage and continued to pull her. Momo was wrapped in something similar to a harness from Black Whip as she was slowly being pulled out. She created a flashbang, throwing it in the villain's face. Holy cow, this kid is strong, said the sludge villain, trying to hold on to her. Izuku gritted his teeth even more as he continued to pull on Momo. He didn't even know where this strength was coming from. Momo created multiple flashbangs from her skin and used it on the villain. Then it worked. Momo was out of the villain's grasp and launched towards Izuku. Izuku caught her in his arms, falling from the force he pulled her at. Izuku had cushioned her to make sure he took to the brunt of the blast. Izuku struggled to catch his breath, holding Momo tightly as they landed in a heap on the pavement. His body ached from the impact, but the immediate relief of pulling her away from the villain was worth it. Still, the sludge villain was enraged, and Izuku could feel the heat of his fury as the villain prepared to launch himself at them again. "You brat! You are dead!" the villain screamed, his limbs coiling, ready to strike. But before the sludge villain could advance, a sudden flash of light streaked across the street, and a burst of cold and hot air swirled around them. The villain froze mid-motion, his entire form shaking as he looked at the man before him. Floating in front of Momo and Izuku was Frostflare, one of the few sidekicks to Endeavor. He was in a hero suit of deep blue with black accents all over. He was ranked 39th on the charts, and he was the son of Endeavor. Frostflare's icy blue eyes glinted as he hovered just above the ground, his body surrounded by a shimmering aura of frozen air. His white hair, edged with a faint blue glow, shifted slightly in the wind, and his intense gaze locked onto the sludge villain with an air of authority. The streets, which had been full of chaos just moments before, fell silent for a brief second, the tension palpable as the villain recoiled, sensing the sudden shift in the atmosphere. "You're not going anywhere," Frostflare said, his voice calm but icy, dripping with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how to handle a situation like this. He waved his hand, sending a powerful ice blast toward the villain, effectively freezing him. The ice blast shot forward with incredible speed, striking the sludge villain's writhing mass with a violent crash. The villain let out a strangled, gurgling scream as the cold surged through his body, freezing him solidly in an instant. His tendrils, which had been lashing violently toward Momo and Izuku, were now stiffened and rigid, completely immobilized by the intense frost that had overtaken him. Frostflare turned down his flames and floated down to the ground with graceful ease, his boots barely making a sound as they landed on the pavement. He glanced briefly at Momo and Izuku, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he nodded toward the villain, who was now nothing more than a frozen, grotesque statue of sludge. "That should hold him for now," Frostflare said, his voice calm and authoritative, but with an undertone of satisfaction. His piercing, icy gaze turned toward the chaos around them. The remaining panic in the streets seemed to subside now that the immediate threat had been neutralized. Heroes from nearby had already begun to secure the area, ushering civilians to safety and keeping the perimeter clear. Izuku, still holding Momo in his arms, breathed a sigh of relief as the adrenaline in his body began to fade. His body was sore, aching from the impact of the villain's blow and the strain of pulling Momo from the sludge's grasp, but the rush of victory and the relief of her safety kept him going. He carefully helped her to her feet, making sure she was steady before he took a step back. "Are you two all right?" he asked, walking over to them. Izuku nodded, wincing slightly as his sore body protested the movement. "Yeah, we're fine," he said, his voice rough but steady. "Thanks to you." Momo, who had been quiet for a moment, smiled up at Frostflare. "We really owe you one," she said, her voice warm despite the chaotic circumstances. "That ice blast, you were amazing." Frostflare gave a small, almost imperceptible nod in acknowledgement. "It's my job," he said simply, as though it were no big deal. But Izuku could tell by the way his gaze lingered on them that there was a deeper layer of thought behind his words, a quiet intensity that suggested a willingness to help, but also a certain distance. Frostflare's gaze lingered on Izuku and Momo, his icy blue eyes scanning them with a mix of curiosity and quiet approval. Despite his calm exterior, there was something in his demeanor that hinted at a deeper sense of urgency, a weight that he carried silently. "You've got potential," Frostflare said, breaking the silence. "Continue to train hard, and work smart, and I will see you in the top 10 of the hero charts in a few years," he said, smiling at the two. "Let's get you some medical attention," he said, putting arms around the two kids and walking them back. The three of them were then almost blown down by a big gust of wind. They looked to see it was All Might standing there. "I heard the commotion. What happened?" he asked, looking behind them to see the sludge villain that fell out of his pocket earlier was frozen in the middle of the street. "All Might," Frostflare greeted calmly, stepping forward. "I've neutralized the villain. He won't be causing any more trouble." He gestured to the frozen sludge villain, his expression stoic. All Might's eyes darted between Frostflare, the frozen villain, and the two teenagers. His trademark smile faltered for the briefest moment. Thank you, Frostflare. You've done well. His gaze settled on Izuku, who instinctively straightened despite the soreness coursing through his body. Young man, you seem to find danger wherever you go, All Might said, his booming voice directed at Izuku. Are you all right? What happened here? Izuku hesitated, his mind racing. He didn't want to draw attention to himself, especially after using Black Whip so openly. I'm fine, sir, he stammered, bowing slightly. The villain attacked us out of nowhere. Frostflare saved the day. Frostflare tilted his head slightly, observing the interaction between All Might and Izuku with a subtle curiosity. The boy's nervousness wasn't unusual. All Might had that effect on people, after all, but there was something about Izuku's demeanor that caught his attention. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but it was clear the young man carried more weight on his shoulders than most his age. All Might, meanwhile, beamed down at Izuku, his trademark grin back in full force. Good to hear. You've got a knack for survival, young man, he said, giving Izuku a hearty pat on the shoulder. Izuku winced slightly, but managed to put on a sheepish smile. All Might then turned his attention to Momo, his expression softening. And you, young lady, are you hurt? I'm fine. Thank you, Momo replied, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. All Might nodded approvingly before looking back at the frozen villain. Excellent work, he said, addressing Frostflare. Your control over your quirk is impeccable. The precision of that ice blast remarkable. Frostflare crossed his arms, his expression unchanging. It's all about control and timing, he said simply. No point in power without precision. His tone was neutral, but there was an unmistakable edge to his words, a quiet pride in his mastery of his abilities. Frostflare looked at the two teens and smiled as there was an ambulance off to the side. Why don't you two go and get some medical attention to make sure you're fine, he said, then turning to All Might. Will you help me with the villain, All Might? All Might nodded firmly. Of course. Let's ensure this villain doesn't cause any more trouble. You unthaw the villain, and I will seal him so that the police can apprehend him when they arrive. Frostflare's icy blue eyes lingered briefly on the two teens before he turned his full attention to the frozen villain. As he approached, his aura of frost began to intensify again, the air around him shimmering with a mixture of cold mist and heat distortion. All Might followed close behind, his towering presence overshadowing Frostflare's more subtle but equally commanding demeanor. Meanwhile, Izuku and Momo made their way to the waiting ambulance. Izuku winced with each step, his body protesting from the strain he'd put on it. Momo, though shaken, walked steadily beside him, her gaze flicking back toward Frostflare. Do you think he's always that composed? She asked, her voice quiet as though not wanting to disturb the atmosphere. Izuku glanced back at Frostflare, who was now speaking with All Might as they examined the villain. I don't know, he admitted, but he definitely knows what he's doing. It's like he's been through this 100 times before. Makes me wonder if Endeavor is the same way, you know, like father like son. Momo nodded thoughtfully. It's reassuring, isn't it? Knowing that there are heroes like him out there. Izuku smiled faintly. Yeah, it is. As the two teens reached the paramedics, one of them, a young woman with a warm smile and steady hands, helped Izuku onto a stretcher. You've had a rough day, she said kindly. Let's make sure everything's all right. Momo hesitated, glancing at Izuku. I think I'm fine, she said, though her voice wavered slightly. The paramedic gave her a reassuring nod. Even if you feel okay, it's good to get checked out. Adrenaline can mask injuries. Izuku watched as Momo was being treated first per his agreement when he felt someone stand behind him. He turned around to see Death Arms was there. He stood up straighter for when he would address him. His expression was stern but not unfriendly, a seasoned hero sizing up someone who had clearly been through the ringer. You all right, kid? That is a lot even for heroes, he asked calmly. Yes, sir, he replied. I would like to say sorry, sir. I understand that Quirk uses bad, but I just wanted to make sure that she was going to be okay. I understand if I am going to get in trouble, he said, bowing down before him. Death Arms tilted his head, his stern expression softening slightly at Izuku's humility. He placed a firm but not unkind hand on Izuku's shoulder, his grip steady and reassuring. Relax, kid, he said. First off, you were attacked, which right out of the gate allows you to use your quirk to defend yourself. Secondly, I wanted to say I was impressed with your skills, strength, and wits to save your friend or girlfriend or whatever she is to you, he said, leaning against the ambulance. Izuku's face turned bright red at Death Arm's comment, his hands waving in front of him frantically. She's not my girlfriend. We're friends. He stammered, his voice a mix of embarrassment and panic. Momo, overhearing the exchange as she was being checked over by the paramedics, glanced over with a slight blush but composed herself quickly. Thank you for the assistance, she said politely, addressing Death Arms. Death Arms chuckled, his stern exterior softening further. Relax, kid. I'm just messing with you, he said, his deep voice carrying a hint of amusement. But jokes aside, you did well. Not a lot of people your age would have the guts to jump into a situation like that, let alone handle it as well as you did. Izuku blinked, the praise catching him off guard. Thank you, sir, he said, bowing slightly. I couldn't stand by and do nothing. That's good. What I am saying is that I hope to see you down the line. With what you just did, you will be a great hero, he said honestly. I completely agree, said Kimui Woods walking up to them. Good work out there, kid. Maybe we can work in the future together. You are pretty strong if you are able to pull her out, he said, looking to see All Might was stuffing the villain back in a jar. No need to be so formal, kid. Just keep working hard, and I'm sure you'll make it far. Momo, now finished with her checkup, stepped beside Izuku. Her expression was composed, but there was a glimmer of pride in her eyes as she looked at him. Yagi is remarkable, she said. He was fearless in protecting me, and I wouldn't have been able to hold my own without his quick thinking. Izuku blushed furiously at her words. It was nothing, really. You were amazing too, Yaoyorozu. Momo's cheeks turned a faint pink, but she maintained her poise. Thank you. But we both know teamwork made the difference. Kimui Woods nodded approvingly. Teamwork is essential. It's what separates the solo vigilantes from true heroes. Unlike my associate over there, he said, pointing to MT Lady flaunting herself around the press and media. The others chuckled as the two aspiring heroes were being checked out by workers. A couple of hours later, Izuku was walking Momo to the train station to send her on her way home. Izuku coughed, trying to find a topic to think of. Well, that was something, wasn't it? Momo nodded, her hands clasped neatly in front of her as they walked. Despite her composed demeanor, the faintest smile tugged at the corners of her lips. It was, she agreed, not exactly how I envisioned today going. But I suppose that's the nature of being a hero, isn't it? Unpredictable. Izuku chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his head. Yeah, definitely unpredictable. I mean, villains attacking out of nowhere? That's kind of standard, but still. Momo glanced at him, her expression softening. You handled yourself well, Yagi. I don't think I've ever seen anyone move so decisively in a situation like that. Izuku's face turned pink, and he looked down at his shoes. Thank you. But honestly, I just acted. You were the one who stayed calm and thought of using flashbangs at some point. We make a good team, Momo said simply, her tone warm but matter of fact. Yeah, we do, Izuku said, his voice quiet but sincere. He looked at her, and for a moment, their eyes met. He quickly turned away, feeling his face heat up again. So are you okay? I mean, really okay? Momo hesitated, then gave a small nod. I am. A bit shaken, perhaps, but otherwise fine. What about you? You pushed yourself pretty hard back there. I'm okay, Izuku said quickly, though his body ached in protest with every step. I'll probably feel it tomorrow, but it's nothing I can't handle. Momo's brow furrowed slightly. You should rest. Overexertion can lead to injuries if you're not careful. I will, Izuku promised. I just wanted to make sure you got to the train station safely and sorry for not using my healing quirk back there. I didn't want them to see me using more than one, he said as he saw the train station in the distance. That is quite all right, and thank you for being a gentleman, Yagi, she said, nudging him with her hip. Izuku stumbled slightly at the gentle nudge, his face turning bright red. He let out a nervous chuckle and adjusted his pace to match hers again. Oh, yeah? Of course. I mean, it's the least I could do after everything. Momo smiled, clearly amused by his flustered reaction, but she didn't press further. The train station loomed closer, its lights casting a warm glow on the cobblestone streets. The hum of the evening crowd filled the air, a stark contrast to the chaos they had experienced earlier. As they approached the entrance, Momo hesitated. Thank you for saving me today, Yagi. I was pretty scared, she said in a bold move, hugging him. Izuku turned into a tomato, hesitated, and hugged her back. He noticed she was much easier to hug than Jiro because of the height difference. I didn't know what else to do, Izuku stammered, his voice muffled by her shoulder. I just wanted to make sure you were safe. Momo's gentle laugh filled his ears, and she pulled back just slightly to look at him. Her eyes were soft, but there was a deep sense of gratitude in them. And you did, Yagi. You were amazing out there. She paused, giving him a small smile that made his heart skip. But I think I should thank you for saving me more than once today. Oh, you don't have to do that, he said, waving her off, trying to fan himself from the blush still on his face. Momo's smile only grew at his flustered reaction. I insist, she said firmly but kindly. Without you, things could have gone much worse. You deserve recognition for that. Trust me, I don't need anything or want anything, he said. Momo tilted her head slightly, a thoughtful look crossing her face. Even if you don't think you need or want recognition, it's still important to acknowledge the good you've done, Yagi. You have a habit of underselling yourself. Izuku scratched his head awkwardly, unsure how to respond. I just think it's what any hero would have done. You would have done the same for me, Yaoyorozu. No question. She smiled at him warmly, the kind of smile that made his heart flutter and his thoughts scatter. Perhaps, but not everyone acts with the same conviction and selflessness you do. That's a rare quality, Yagi. You should hold on to it. The train soon pulled up to the station, and he waved her off, watching her head to her home. Izuku sighed as he put his hands into his pockets. He really wasn't looking forward to seeing his family because there was no doubt his dad told them what happened. Thank God, he didn't see him use a quirk. That was when a pit of dread hit him. The news stations and media. They likely recorded him using Black Whip to save Momo. He prayed they didn't see much. 30 minutes later, he stood outside of his door taking in a breath. Multiple things could happen if he opened that door. The first thing could be they hadn't watched the news yet or his father didn't tell them. The second thing was he did tell them, and they wanted to know what happened. Or the third thing he thought of as they found out he had a quirk and would have to explain. Let's hope it wasn't the latter option. He opened the door to see his mom and father on the couch as they approached him. He was surprised his dad was able to get here before him, but then remembered he had to make sure Momo was safe when he dropped her off. Izuku, we saw what happened on the news. It's on the television right now? Said his mother, pulling him to the living room. There he saw Inori and Ichiro with a straight look on their faces as their eyes were fixed on the TV, but he knew they were pissed. The five of them watched as it cut to the 7 o'clock news. This was likely the third time they had seen this, but they were still watching it on TV. The room was tense as the footage played on the television, a shaky video from someone's phone showing the chaotic scene of the earlier incident. The camera zoomed in just as Izuku was about to extend out Black Whip, but Momo's multiple flashbangs had blocked it out of view right as he was able to pull her out, making him internally sigh with relief. The news anchor cleared his throat before speaking. A little while ago, a sludge-like villain was attacking middle school students when they were walking down the street. The two students reacted quickly to the situation. Thankfully, the hero Frost Flare was able to come in to stop the sludge villain from causing further damage. But not before a student by the name of Izuku Yagi pulled out his friend. The news anchor continued. Izuku Yagi pulled out Momo Yaoyorozu from the villain, creating an opening for the hero Frost Flare to finish the job. While the hero Frost Flare intervened to neutralize the threat, witnesses report that the students played a pivotal role in ensuring no one was seriously harmed. Authorities commend their actions as they were the ones attacked first and defended themselves, but remind civilians to leave such dangerous situations to licensed heroes. Toshinori turned to his son and looked at him with a calculating stare. First off, are you okay? Izuku couldn't help but think this was the first time in ages that he was given this much attention. Yeah, I am, he said, looking at everyone staring at him. Good, he said, getting a smack on the back of his head from his father. What the hell is this? He said, gesturing to the TV. Izuku didn't flinch from the hit, but rather looked confused at the TV. That was me saving my friend from an attack, he said, pointing to Momo. Ichiro whistled when he pointed at her. Give her my number while you are at it. She looks hot, he said, nodding his head slightly, but was hit by his father in the chest. Not the time, he said, turning back to Izuku. That was the dumbest thing you could have done, running to the fray like that. Izuku was getting a tick mark on his head. He was glad they didn't see him use his quirk, but this was ridiculous. He saved Momo's life. Where was his credit? Was that something not to be proud of? Toshinori's words stung, and Izuku felt his frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He clenched his fists, trying to keep his voice steady. I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. Momo was in danger. I had to act. You had to act? Toshinori repeated, his tone sharp. You are quirkless. Charging in is going to get you killed. So, this is what this was about. They thought he was still quirkless, thus making them think he was weak and an idiot for charging in. This was something he didn't think of in the many possibilities of being talked to. Inori walked up to him, shaking her head in exasperation. Izuku, as your sister, this was an idiot move. You needed to let the pros handle it. If you saw this as you shot to get yourself seen as a hero, then that was even more stupid. His heart pounded in his chest as he tried to keep calm. I wasn't trying to get attention. I was trying to save someone. Momo was in danger, and I couldn't just sit by. I had to do something. You're not a hero, Izuku, and you never will be. Ichiro shot back, his voice harsh with frustration. You don't have the training, you don't have the experience, and worst of all, you don't have a quirk. He was being tag-teamed, and he was about to reach his boiling point. He was genuinely trying not to lose it right now. I wasn't trying to be a hero, he said, his voice strained, but firm. His mother's voice cut through the tension like a knife. Izuku, look at the footage. You're rushing in without any thought for the consequences. Everyone is right, Izuku. You need to accept that and move on. Izuku stood frozen, feeling like the air had been knocked out of him. He was clenching his fists so hard that his veins and muscles were starting to show. You know what? You guys are right, Izuku said, his voice laced with bitter laughter. His hands trembled at his sides as his knuckles turned white. You're absolutely right. The next time that someone is in danger, I won't care about it. I will just sit and watch as they are begging for help and not do anything. You guys couldn't be any more right, he said, still bitterly laughing. Oh, come on, Izuku, Ichiro scoffed, crossing his arms. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic? Izuku turned on him, his emerald eyes blazing with frustration. The thing that is so stupid is that we wouldn't be having this conversation right now if it was Inori or Ichiro who had saved someone. We would be celebrating and partying, and they would be praised like no tomorrow. But because it is me, we must make sure Izuku knows it's wrong. Toshinori was getting a bit annoyed with this right now. He hadn't expected Izuku to take it this far, and he normally never did. All right, that is enough, Izuku, he said, trying to end it. Fact scoffed as he looked at his dad, and the fact that you didn't deny just proves my point. I said that is enough, Izuku, Toshinori glaring at him. No, it isn't. Dad, like I said, this wouldn't be a conversation if this was Ichiro or Inori. So let me ask you this. You and Mom are walking down the street when, suddenly, Mom is taken down the alleyway. Are you going to sit there with your thumb up your butt and be like, "Welp, looks like I have to wait for the pros to show up while my wife is being taken to God knows where"? Toshinori's eyes widened slightly at Izuku's blunt and brutal example. That's not the same thing, he said, his tone hardening. Don't twist this into something it's not. Oh, it's not the same? Izuku challenged, his voice rising. What's different about it? Because it's you in the situation? Because it's someone you care about? If anything, that just proves my point even more. He took a step closer, his frustration spilling over. You'd act. You wouldn't hesitate. You'd do what you could to save Mom, no matter how dangerous it was. Because you care. Just like Inori would do, just like Ichiro would do, and just like I will continue to do. It is common sense to help people when they are in trouble. I am not going to sit there and watch Yaoyorozu, one of the few people who I have as friends, fight for her life, he ranted, breathing heavily. Toshinori pinched the bridge of his nose, his patience wearing thin, but before he could say anything, Inori jumped back in. That's enough, Izuku, you need to learn to. Izuku clicked his teeth together in annoyance. Shut up, Inori. The only reason you and Ichiro are pissed is because it wasn't you on that TV. You weren't the one getting the attention. The room was silent for a moment, the tension so thick it was suffocating. Izuku's chest heaved as he tried to steady his breathing, his anger still simmering just beneath the surface. His siblings' stunned expressions only fueled the fire burning within him. Yeah, that's what I thought, Izuku muttered, his voice bitter and cutting. You can't deny it, can you? The only reason this is such a big deal is because it was me, he said, wiping away the sweat that was on his forehead. But you know what? Like I said before, you all are right and will continue to be right. Anything that you say goes, and anything I say is wrong and will always be wrong. That's just the reality that I live in. You are right, Dad. You are right, Mom. You are right, Ichiro. You are right, Inori. And I am wrong per usual, he said, turning away from them to go to his room. The door slammed behind Izuku as he retreated to his room, leaving the rest of the family in stunned silence. His words echoed in their ears, slicing through the tension like a sharp blade. Izuku sat on his bed, breathing heavily, trying to calm the storm raging inside him. The room was quiet, but the weight of his thoughts felt suffocating. His hands trembled as he clutched his face, wiping away the sweat that dripped down his brow. His mind raced, replaying the confrontation with his family repeatedly. He continued to wipe away the sweat from his face as he tried to calm down, but the sweat seemed to be never-ending. He then started to realize he was crying. God damn it, he muttered to himself. Is it that hard to feel appreciated? He said to himself, still crying. He then heard a knock on his door, and he shook his head, wiping his tears once more. He opened it with a crack, but not enough for whoever it was to see him or see him crying. What? He asked bluntly. It's Dad. I wanted to talk, he said, fiddling with his fingers. There is nothing to talk about. I told you already. You are right, and there is nothing to prove it wrong. Forget this ever happened. Just move on and let's be done with it, he said. Toshinori sighed a heavy, weary sound. Izuku, listen, he began, his voice calm but firm. I said it's fine. Just forget this ever happened. The morning will come, and we'll go on with our lives as if nothing happened. Let's be down with this ordeal. I gotta get up in the morning for school anyway, he said, shutting his door. The door clicked shut, leaving Toshinori standing outside in the hallway. He sighed again, leaning his forehead against the door for a moment. He knew pushing Izuku further wouldn't help. The boy was hurting, and sometimes, words couldn't mend the chasm of emotions between them. He walked back to the bedroom to see Inko was on the bed already with a concerned look on his face. Inko sat on the edge of the bed, her expression a mix of worry and sadness. She looked up at Toshinori as he entered the room, her eyes searching his face for understanding. How is he? Inko asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. He isn't talking to me, if that's anything, he said, plopping himself down on the bed. Maybe if we give him some space. That seems like the best course of action, she said, laying down next to him. Yeah, Toshinori agreed with a heavy sigh. Maybe giving him some space is the best thing we can do for now. Like I said, he needs some space. Just wait for a bit and see what happens. Toshinori nodded as he took his clothes off to put some sleeping attire on and call it a day. So, this was the end of part 3 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.